Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. This is Ukraine War News Update, the first part thereof for the 21st of November 2025. I say first part, I've just done a news update on the peace negotiations, so not really. The second part thereof for the 21st. This is a hits and losses video where we look at what's been going on along the front lines for the past 24 hours. We are going to be talking about a couple of updates concerning the peace negotiations that have happened since I've done the video just 10 minutes ago. Already some developments, and we're going to look at losses as well. And Andrew Perpetua has a loss list out, which is first time for months, so fantastic. We get into that. Okay, if you haven't already, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. That really does make a difference. So thank you very much to those who have already done so. Super appreciated. Right, let's get into it. Here we have the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course. You can find them linked in the description below. We have 1,050 personnel lost, so that's back over 1,000. Good news for the Ukrainians there. But no tanks lost in the last 24 hours. 3 armored combat vehicles. 20 artillery systems, so that's both of those below the daily average, and 65 vehicles and fuel tanks. No other bits of equipment listed other than drones that I don't usually spend too much time on for all the reasons I have given you before. Right, so yeah, not a huge story to be gleaned from these stats, other than the personnel losses have gone up again to over 1,000. So I think it was 800 and something yesterday. So that's a 200 man rise there. Now, on personnel matters, Tim White here says Russia is claiming to have captured Kupiansk. Gerasimov embroiled in an illegitimate child scandal. I've not heard about this. So he's in charge of the war. Told Putin 80% of Vovchansk was captured, while the West Group's units liberated Kupiansk and continues to destroy Ukrainian formations encircled on the left bank of the Oskil. Wow! So 80% of Vovchansk has now been captured, which is was that what they had claimed previously anyway? And Kupiansk is entirely captured. I'm not sure that is entirely true, but at least we know what the Russians are claiming there. The situation in the Pokrovsk direction remains extremely difficult. Now, when we go and look at Andrew Perpetua's loss list, I think this gives you an indication, this sort of video, as to the number of unarmored vehicles that the Russians lose on a consistent basis. Situation in Pokrovsk is extremely difficult still, but Bikers Group is destroying Russian motorcycle groups, very aptly so, I guess, that go on assaults and carry ammunition and provision. Drones here in this video, 4 motorcycles or 4 motorcyclists, a car, another car carrying a motorcycle, and a riding group. So these are the sorts of bits of kit that are not included on the Oryx list. I talked about that yesterday. Yeah, we get variation in lists that really probably correlate with dumping of montage videos that have huge numbers of pieces of equipment on them. Thank you very much, Ivan. Huge numbers of pieces of equipment on them that may get dropped by a particular unit on a particular day, and then that can skew losses for both, or either the Russians or the Ukrainians. But also, we need to understand that Oryx doesn't include equipment like this, whereas Andrew does. And as a result, it's very time consuming. He says, I've not posted this for a while because it's been overwhelmingly busy, but here are the losses I could identify yesterday. So the 182 people killed on the videos that he's looked at. So that's actual confirmed sort of Russian deaths, 182. And of course, that's just one day, 182 people on video, and think of all the other people who aren't included on the video, and all the wounded people and so on and so forth. So anyway, these lists are very, very, very long. Just to remind you of the colors, the top here is SATs and comms equipment that usually isn't massively expensive. They can be just individual Starlinks and stuff like that. So he does this because some people are interested in the comms equipment. So you can actually take that off. I think realistically, most of that stuff off. Sometimes it's radars and stuff, which is evidently more valuable. Then we have brown and grey. The grey are the cars. The browns are well, we get into this as we look at them, but just the combat assets are usually these kind of turquoise, yellow, green, orange, that kind of area there. And so we can see the dark green are the UGVs, and again, I wouldn't particularly include them, but of course he doesn't do this list for me, right? So let's look at the Russian losses first. Actually, I normally start with Ukrainian, don't I? But we're going to go to Russian. So as you can see, surveillance and comms equipment, most of this is, you know, undesignated, you know, unlabeled equipment. So I would just pretty much ignore most of that. Engineering vehicle thrown on there, damaged one. Then we've got 3 UGVs, not too important for me. Artillery, okay, a lot of D20s and D30s there, damaged, but it's very difficult with artillery to know whether the damage is going to impact it at all. You often get footage of drones flying into a howitzer, and then that's it. So you assume it's damaged, but there's no actual battle damage assessment. You just know it's been hit by a drone, so you're assuming it's damaged. Does it, you know, take out the wheel, or does it take out some of the more vital components of the artillery piece? And it's very difficult to get decent BDA of that. Whereas, you know, you look at a tank and it's been hit and it carries on moving, or it's stopped and it's burnt out husk, and you're like, right, we know that is either damaged or destroyed because the video evidence is much more conclusive. Anyway, here we have a number of tanks on the list, 8 tanks. One's a damaged T90M. And we have some T72s, T62, and we've got a track garden shed, so one with all sorts of corrugated iron and sheet iron and whatnot built around it to make it look rather Mad Max-esque. Then we have a good, 7 infantry fighting vehicles, mainly undesignated BMPs there. 50% of those are, or just over 50%, are irretrievably lost, abandoned, or destroyed. Single AFE, single APC, a couple of trucks, and then we're down to ATV. So motorcycles, quads, buggies. These are the pieces of equipment that Oryx does not list, and look at how many there are for the Russians. Now, Ukrainians do use them as well, but the Russians just seem to use them more, predominantly because they attack with them, and the Ukrainians don't attack so much. And when the Ukrainians are attacking, they appear to be using armored vehicles much more, mobility vehicles. So you'll see the mobility vehicle category skew more to Ukrainian losing more of them, and then the Russians losing a lot more ATVs, and as you can see, civilian vehicles as well. Most of those are irretrievably lost in the ATV category, and about, I don't know, for the civilian vehicles like your Nevas, your Ladas, and whatnot, Bobiks, Loafs, Bukanka, the Scooby-Doo vans and whatnot, about a third of those irretrievably lost, just over. Okay, so that is the Russian loss list, and the Ukrainian loss list is pretty big as well. So let's have a look at the pinks at the top. Now, there are some electronic warfare systems that are put up there. Starlinks and comms equipment, generally, you know, not, I'm assuming these aren't like huge bits of kit. I don't know the Octava L, I have to say. It's probably, I mean, we'll do a little bit of a search now. Octava L. And let's go to Octavia. Octava L electronic warfare. I don't know if I've got enough time to go and search this up now. No, doesn't seem like there's anything that's immediately showing itself. So I'll do a bit of research off this video. But anyway, command and control vehicle and abandoned M577. That's based on the M113. It's not too much to lose. Radar radar is a smaller one, I think. Is that an Israeli radar? Engineering vehicles. So 4 of these, a couple of excavators, a crane, a front loader with a backhoe. So yeah, these diggers and whatnot. Quite a few UGVs. Ukrainians use, I think, more unmanned ground vehicles, these ground drones, than the Russians do at the moment. It was something that the Russians, I think, had an advantage of right at the beginning. They were, I think, getting off the ground using these, or staying on the ground, using these a little bit more quickly than the Ukrainians were, but now the Ukrainians are mass producing all sorts of different UGVs. I think they've probably got the advantage there. Fewer artillery pieces, but interesting that they are old D30s there for the Ukrainians. We have 5 tanks on the list, and none of them particularly new Western ones. In fact, and there are a couple of undesignated ones, but T-80s and T-72s, single infantry fighting vehicle, couple of APCs, and then you've got these MRAPs and infantry mobility vehicles, and that's what I was talking about. So the Ukrainians attack with these. Most of these are irretrievably lost or basically abandoned. You've got Senator MRAPs, BAT UMGs, Humvees, Kirpies, Mastiffs, FV-103. That's more of an infantry fighting vehicle for the British have provided, Cossacks and whatnot. That's what the Ukrainians attack on. You can see here, ATVs, they've got half a dozen quads, whereas the Russians, look at the ATVs listed there. Absolutely incredible number. So that shows you a real stark difference between the two sides. Ukraine is using quite a lot of SUVs and trucks, and that's why we do so much fundraising for them, because they do use them and they get through them. We try and get them armored, somewhat armored vehicles to give them a little bit more protection through Car for Ukraine, and Dnipro do a really good job with their vehicles as well. But yeah, they do use them an awful lot, and they lose them an awful lot too. So anyway, that gives you a bit of an insight into the sorts of losses both sides take. Right now I'm going to show you another video here. This is from the Phoenix Regiment. They destroyed a PPRU-1 OVOD mobile air defense command post, 2 Russian trucks and soldiers in the Konstantinivka direction there. So good to see a fairly high value bit of kit and mobile air defense command post getting taken out by this unit. And what else do we have? Ukraine's P1 Sun drone interceptor is now taking down Russian Shaheds, developed by Skyfall with speeds of up to 408 kilometers an hour. It's a fast homegrown answer to Russia's kamikaze drones. So you can see here that actually the Shaheds are getting taken out by a variety of drones now. We've talked about the Wild Hornets one yesterday, which they have announced a competition for who can take out the most. Someone had taken out 24 in one night. Now we've got, and it's not just, by the way, Shaheds there. You can see a variety of drones being taken out by this particular interceptor drone, the P1 Sun, which is a homegrown bit of kit. So we see a number of homegrown Ukrainian interceptors being utilized now, which they'll be surely wanting to sell on the open market at some point soon, or have made under license by international manufacturers. But yeah, that's good news. We're starting to see hopefully we'll see this reflected in the numbers going forward. But interception rates have not been great recently because the Russians have used tactics to overwhelm air defenses, and they've changed their trajectories and flight paths and the tactics they use and the technology on board these Shaheds and similar drones. And so, Ukrainians have had to react. I think they're now just ramping up production of interceptors, but of course they need interceptor crews and radars and all sorts of other personnel and material resources to go alongside. Just you don't take out Shahed drones just by producing interceptors. You got to use them, right? So hopefully that we'll start seeing improved interception rates going forward. Now we have another train disaster we saw yesterday at the Perm, those oil or gas tanks on fire, those rail carriages that were significantly on fire and also derailed, causing a right problem there. Well, here we have approximately 150 meters of railway track destroyed in the Irkutsk region now after a locomotive and 9 coal cars were derailed. The incident occurred on the Alzamay Oblepika section of the East Siberian Railway in the Taishet district of Irkutsk region. It looks fairly significant. I don't know if it is sabotage, but there's quite a lot of this kind of activity going on at the moment, and I think it probably does indicate sabotage, but who knows? Still good news for the Ukrainians there. Right now on to interceptions. Well, not interceptions, now on to distance strikes, and we're going to start with the infographic detailing the Russian drones into Ukraine. 115 were sent, 95 of which were taken out. So that's a fairly okay in interception rate, 79%, but I think it needs to be higher, but fewer drones sent there, so it's kind of less of an issue. 20 drones getting through, still significant though, isn't it? Ukraine stopped or shot down, stopped by electronic warfare, 106 out of the 135 drones. Why is there a difference in the numbers that he says? So I presume someone's still flying then. Ukraine shot down or stopped by electronic warfare, 106 out of 135 drones launched by Russia overnight. Another drone was still flying when Kiev published this report. Okay, those numbers don't add up. So actually, it could be 29 drones got through, or it could be 20 drones. So that infographic and his numbers are a little bit different. Anyway, it's worth noting that Russia is really being very systematic in its approach to taking out node after node of Ukraine's energy grid. Shaheds for substations, Iskanders for power plants, all timed before the winter. They're having a much better go at it this winter rather than what we've seen in previous winters, where they were talking big about taking out Ukraine's energy infrastructure, and it would end up being much more resilient, and they were unable to get through. Well, now with developments in missile and drone technology and tactics, and just possibly using more of them, they are having much greater success. A Texty analysis has showed that 3 months of strikes have targeted the exact infrastructure that lets Ukraine's grid adapt to damage. So this is a real challenge for the Ukrainians. Every night it is compounded, of course. Now, this morning, whilst after those figures were compiled, a swarm of Shahed drones was seen flying at a very low altitude over Odessa, with dozens launched by Russia. One drone struck a residential building on the city's coastline. Odessa has been under continuous attack all night, really, and the drones have been amassing. It's interesting. There is a map of this. No, not there. Where do I have the map? This is worth looking at. Oh no, it seems to have gone walkabout. Oh well, we'll come to it, I'm sure, in a second. Now, here we have a drone falling into the sea near Odessa, right on the coastline here. Downed Russian kamikaze drone crashing into the sea near Odessa. Russia's been relentlessly attacking the city with waves of Shaheds throughout the night. And another attack on Odessa is happening now, says Tim White, or C said a couple of hours ago. Smoke can see rising from the city. This is the map I was looking for. So this is published just over 3 hours ago now, and I was wondering where they do the amassing. So one of the changes of tactics the Russians have integrated into their attacks is as they send these Shaheds probably at the maximal amount that they can, right? They can't send them all at once. They don't have enough launchers, enough people, enough, whatever. So they send them one after the other. But the problem is that you can more easily shoot them down when they come in one after the other. So what they've been doing is amassing over the Black Sea until they're all in the same place, and then all of them kind of go to Odessa, for example, at the same time, and therefore it overwhelms the Ukrainian air defenses. But I was wondering where they amass, because surely you would just want to take your boats out there and shoot these bad boys down. Like fish in a barrel. But it seems that they amass obviously much more cleverly right next to Russian occupied Kherson, just south of the Kimburn Peninsula, and going on a little bit further, actually, more by Skadovsk, maybe, and they're massed there, and so it's much more difficult for the Ukrainians to get out there to shoot them down, because that's kind of Russian maritime territory at the moment, controlled by the Russians. Now, this is a drone that was seen in Odessa this morning, just flying bang into a building. I have to apologize for yesterday. I showed you a bunch of videos where the sound was really important. I didn't have the sound turned on. I wasn't doing it in a way that shows you sounds, and you didn't hear the sound of the submunitions from the ATACMS bombs and also the cruise missiles in Ternopil, which I wanted to communicate to you, because to give you a sense of what people were hearing and the experience that they had, both the terror in Ternopil, but then also knowing that those ATACMS had been successful in releasing submunitions, and you couldn't hear anything, and I was happily talking you through the sounds. Okay, so that is an unfinished apartment building. So I guess it's good that has gone into an apartment building that has no people living in it, but yeah, it just slams into a building. it doesn't look like it's been particularly electronically war interfered with. Now, the Russians also struck Zaporizhzhia last night. 5 people have been killed there. I mean, just these numbers on a nightly basis in these places, it's just, as I keep saying, it's unsustainable. The damage, the destruction that Russians are causing to places like Zaporizhzhia, Dnipro, and Kharkiv as well are just awful. 5 people killed, 3 more injured, according to local authorities. And they say Russia wants peace, do they? Anyway, that is one of the scenes from there. We have videos of Zaporizhzhia. Dreadful scenes in the city after strikes hit a supermarket and private houses. And here we have some of these images, which are pretty striking, as Zaporizhzhia has been badly struck. We also have, that's enough from Zaporizhzhia. Odessa being attacked overnight, resulting in 4 injuries then. So we've got it being attacked now, but it was also struck overnight. 3 of the victims have been admitted to hospital. Service station and cars there wrecked, and residential buildings hit, including the motor of 1 drone breaking the roof of a house. So again, a lot of residential properties being affected in Odessa. And then we have here the result of a Russian drone attack in Dnipro, not last night, but the night before. This was a food warehouse of the UN World Food Programme being damaged. Look at all that stuff that could be going to needy recipients now being destroyed by the Russians. That's what they do. Death toll, sadly, in Ternopil has risen. So that, if you remember the strikes from a few nights ago, absolutely horrific. Really terrible scenes there, particularly from one building that was absolutely hammered. Now we're hearing that 31 have died, and I think that includes 6 children, and that is awful. 3 more bodies were recovered at 11 o'clock, says Tim White here, more than 50 hours after Russia's massacre, when it deliberately hit 2 tower blocks in the city, he says. Now, let's give you some good news. A real miracle happened. I said yesterday that you're going to see all those missing bodies turned into dead bodies, because I think it's probably too late for them to be saved. Well, actually, as soon as I said that, I pressed stop on the video, and this bit of news came out. A real miracle happened the night before at the site of the rubble of one of the 9-story buildings hit in Ternopil. During another minute of silence, rescuers heard cries for help. There was a man on a level between the 5th and 6th floors of the building, trapped in concrete structures but alive. Emergency workers established contact and began to dig up the rubble. So hopefully that guy survived to fight another day. Now, Crimea last night, this is going on to what Ukraine has achieved. Very little information coming out at the moment. All we know is that Crimea was targeted. Saki, that has an airfield there, a military airbase there, was seemingly targeted. Locals reported explosions at Saki overnight, followed by an attack on a thermal power plant, after which many lost power. So there could be some considerable damage. And actually, we're just hearing this morning. This looks pretty substantial. It's a new video from Crimea. It's from October the 13th, so it wasn't. Yeah, I was thinking this was. So that was a Feodosia oil depot that was hit, I think, twice, wasn't it? Really substantial fire that was seen from out to sea a bit. But here we've got a video coming from behind it. It would be useful if Ukraine could do that again. Slaviansk on Kuban was hit last night. Apparently, a brick factory was targeted by the Ukrainians. I don't know if that was accidentally here or whether that's purposefully targeted and it actually provides some military utility to hit that. And then the Ryazan power plant in Novomichyrinsk was struck on the 19th, causing at least 2 explosions and fire. An Astra analysis reports. OSINT analysts verified footage from the plant, which has a 3,070 megawatt capacity and supplies energy to central Russian regions, including industrial facilities. As I say, though, not too much information coming out in terms of successful Ukrainian strikes, or indeed Russian strikes, other than what's going on in Odessa at the moment. Yeah, don't think there's anything else. Novopavlivka. BMP, 10 Russians were going to Novopavlivka. They were caught by drones. Another assault, 2 BMPs and 2 infantry platoons from different directions on the landings on the road killed about 30 Russians. Oof, that is very costly for the Russians. So just one set of strikes on these 2 BMPs, and that's the end of 30 Russians. Incredible numbers of people being lost. But yeah, generally not too much battle damage assessment for anything that happened overnight. Okay, so let's move on to other bits and pieces. We have, first of all, just this news. Kyiv is to launch its first protected mini heat and power plants as city braces for the hardest wartime winter. So what they're doing is they're building, and this is what we get from an interview with Feodosia, where somebody said that the city is installing 7 gas piston cogeneration units, 6 of which are planned to go online by the end of the year. So they generate 20 megawatts each, enough to power roughly a third of a city district. They feed electricity first to large boiler houses so central heating can keep working when the grid fails. They distribute remaining power to nearby residential buildings and critical infrastructure, and they operate inside purpose-built concrete shelters to withstand near misses and shrapnel from missile and drone strikes. So they can't necessarily withstand direct hits with probably big Iskander missiles or something like that. But in Kyiv, where there's quite a lot of air defense taking place, if you can send those missiles slightly off and so they land nearby, these kind of mini gas piston energy production plants can withstand a lot more. It's stressed that these facilities are not just oversized generators, they are full-fledged small power stations designed from the start with fortifications. He noted that each site is being engineered individually with local grid ties and protection built in from day one, and described the concept as one of the first attempts worldwide to pair distributed combined heat and power with systematic physical shielding against high-intensity missile attacks. Wow. So you can't, the idea is you can't fully protect these big sites. They're just too big. There's too much, you can put drone nets up, but it's not going to protect from big missiles and even big drones really. And yeah, there needs to be a way around this. So it's about what they talk about here is decentralizing. I've talked about this previously with renewables, but decentralizing the power grid. So you don't have these big single power generating power plants that if you take them out, then you're done for. So that's interesting. There's a whole thread here on gold. And I'm not going to go into it, but the central bank, just very quickly, Central Bank of the Russian Federation partially carries out mirroring operations by buying and selling gold. Several people have sent me message about this story, says Prune60. He does a lot of this kind of reporting, so I thought I'd talk about it for a bit. I want to start by saying that people shouldn't jump to bombastic conclusions from just this piece of information. Several interconnected things to consider. Why don't we start by just explaining what this is? These are called mirroring operations, but what are they mirroring? They're mirroring operations made by the Russian Ministry of Finance with the National Welfare Fund. National Welfare Fund is also related to the budget rule. So because when the Ministry of Finance is buying or selling foreign currency of gold related to the National Wealth Fund, they're doing it with the Russian central bank. Thus, the quantity of gold sold is never a problem for the Ministry of Finance. The central bank has to buy it at the exchange rate. So they print the money and give it to the Ministry of Finance. If some of the liquid assets in the National Wealth Fund are actually frozen in the foreign banks, that's also likely not to be an issue because they can just transfer ownership of the blocked assets to the Russian central bank. By printing money to carry out these purchases, the central bank creates inflation. But if they can turn around and sell those assets, then they can destroy the money they received, thus eliminating the inflation they created when they printed the money. And so on and so forth. I won't go into full details. I was talking about this on a live stream yesterday, that actually, if the numbers are to be believed, Russia still has 2,333 tons of gold. And the value of gold has gone up since the beginning of the war. So that's roughly the same amount of gold, but the value's gone up. So actually there is a big gold reserve that Russia can dip into. But of course, if they do that, it can cause inflation, depending on how they do it and how they use it. There's also this talk about a gold-backed payment system that can get around international payments that they might be trying on. But anyway, big, long thread here. I guess the TLDR is here. Ultimately, we don't know how much gold the Russian central bank is going to actually sell overall. I'm not sure even if we know how much the central bank has available to sell. It may be different from the amount they claim they have. That's an important distinction. As a result, we don't know how big of a deal this is. Can't jump to any conclusions. They may use this option sparingly or not, but there are some things in there to consider in this whole thread about mirroring. I haven't really done a very good job of explaining this to you, but you can go and check it out on this thread itself, and all the threads that Prune refers to as well by clicking on the link, which will be in the description below. Now, today's an important day. US sanctions on Russia's Rosneft and Lukoil take effect properly today, potentially leaving nearly 48 million barrels of Russian crude stranded at sea and dozens of tankers scrambling for alternative destinations, according to Bloomberg. Indian refiners are seeking replacement supplies and booking Middle East oil tankers, pushing freight rates near 5-year highs. So it will be inflationary, but it is going to really affect Russia here. US sanctions targeting Russian oil have officially taken effect, and that's probably a good day for Ukraine in that regard. No signs of compromise when we talk about peace from inside Moscow. Today, one of the Russian newspapers that Steve Rosenberg from the BBC has looked at says, quote, Putin is ready for talks on Ukraine on Russia's terms. Another says, after the Alaska summit, from our side, there were no goodwill gestures, just an intensification of attacks. So with all this, talk about peace negotiations, Russia's just upping the intensity of their activity. US envoy to the UN, Mike Waltz, has warned that new sanctions could hit Russia if it continues to ignore calls for peace. He said Washington offered generous terms, including sanctions relief, and they are generous to Russia, and urged Russia to engage with Ukraine. Generous terms, you mean almost everything that Russia wants. Yeah, exactly. Now, Viktor Orban has come out and bigged up the 28-point peace plan, which I think is pretty horrific for Ukraine. President Trump's peace initiative, says the Hungarian leader, has gained new momentum. A 28-point peace plan is on the table. An American negotiating delegation is in Kyiv, and expectations are high worldwide. The American president is a persistent maverick. If he had been president at the time, the war would never have broken out. Shut up. It is clear that once he sets his mind on something, he does not let it go, and he has certainly set his mind on ending the Russian-Ukrainian war. Meanwhile, in Brussels, they've lost the plot once again. While Washington is negotiating peace, President of the Commission is busy figuring out how to secure even more money for Ukraine and for financing the war. We Hungarians will have a word or two to say about this. The moment of truth is upon us. More precisely, it is upon the Brusselian leadership. So absolutely in support of the US and really in support of Russia there. Now, we hear that the head of the GUR, the military intelligence, Kirilo Budanev, and the foreign intelligence service head, Ivanishchenko, are involved in the discussion on a peace plan with the US, according to RBC Ukraine. Umarov, Budanov, and Ivashchenko have been holding talks with the American delegation since the morning. Their meeting has already ended, so that's good news there. And then final things here, Zelensky and Trump will hold a phone call next week. Before that, Zelensky will consult on the US peace plan with leaders in the UK, France, Italy, and Germany. Bloomberg is reporting that Starmer will join Zelensky, Macron, and Merz for the urgent call on the US proposed peace plan at 1 o'clock. So that's good news that the Europeans are getting involved, and obviously you're going to have Trump talking to Zelensky. Last thing I'll say is RIP Manny. The bass player, extraordinarily good bass player for the Stone Roses, sadly died yesterday. He's a bit of a legend in the Manchester music scene. So R.I.P. Manny. If you want to hear an iconic bass line, just start the song "I Want to Be Adored," and you'll get a bit of Manny there for you. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Take care, everybody. Speak to you soon. Toodle pips.